Version 4.1. Initializing upgrades. Accessing peace. Existing without violence, with the ability to calmly resolve conflict. Downloading love. An overwhelming, deep, positive affection towards others. Activating liberty. Living your life as you see fit without infringing on the lives of others.
Welcome to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio. Online at fppradio.com. And we are going to do things a little bit differently today. Today is going to be Thanksgiving leftover AMA. I know I generally only do AMA on Wednesdays, but because I have so many questions that were left over from this past Wednesday, and then I've gotten new questions, I'm going to have to do a special AMA. So again, this is the Thanksgiving leftovers edition of the Ask Me Anything. And again, a lot of these questions from the same person that sent in some questions on Wednesday. Jumping back into the questions here. Isn't childbearing intruding on the rights of others ultimately? The baby will consume and likely help to exponentially grow human population. Well, the whole point of having children is to grow the human population. But the exponentially here, yeah, kind of. Although I think the trends recently are that the population rate isn't necessarily growing at that high of a rate. I could be wrong. It's been a while since I've looked at the numbers. But again, the way exponential works is that the higher the number, a 1% increase is that much larger than a 1% increase when the number was, say, a tenth of what it currently is. But I digress and continue. And also exponentially destroy nature. I don't necessarily know that nature is being exponentially destroyed at the same rate that humans are populating. Certainly there are some places that are being destroyed, other places not so much. But again, it's not something that I've tried to study. And really, it's something that I don't know if there are any accurate studies to determine. The question rather continues, or let me answer the first part here where it says, isn't childbearing intruding on the rights of others? I don't think you could say necessarily, unless you're going to claim that the child, by being created, the parents are intruding on that child because the child didn't ask to be conceived or born. But I don't think that's necessarily what they're asking. And again, there are ways to avoid a pregnancy or to end a pregnancy, and then that opens up a whole other line of or can of worms about is it killing a human to remove an unborn child from a uterus before the child is able to live on their own? Is it killing a human to say, I don't want this child anymore, deliver it via C-section, and then somebody can adopt the child? But unfortunately, that's not necessarily always an option in today's world, at least in the United States, and I don't think it's an option anywhere else in the world. But again, that is a completely other subject, and one that, no matter how many times you have the debate, people are still going to strongly believe in what they believe there. The questioner continues. He says, you went straight to hunting and skipped farming when you assessed your idea of killing and eating one's own meat and food. I'm not surprised, though, most do. Many people seem to believe that humans are the center of all things. Most people never really think deeply about this or anything, really, not just for themselves and with originality. They are programmed to reap by previous generations more so than nature. We've programmed ourselves to reap and justify our actions. Well, unless you believe that humans can survive without, eating something, then, yeah, you kind of have to reap something. And I didn't skip over, and this is in reference to a question from last Wednesday about if I had to kill my own food, would I still eat meat? So the question itself was centered around animals, not food. So he says I skipped over farming, but I did mention farming, that, I am curious if he would also include, no human can eat anything that they don't grow or kill themselves. But that's not what the question was, hence why I didn't answer the question that wasn't asked. He continues here. Even though I'm entertained by shows such as Anarchast and Free Talk Live, I find them both to not be much different than the usual way of doing life business. Not really sure what life business is in reference to here, but I find Anarchast and Free Talk Live to be completely different shows from one another. Anarchast is an interview show where Jeff Berwick is the host and he interviews people. Free Talk Live is an open lines radio program that's actually syndicated on broadcast radio to over 160 stations across the United States. Unfortunately, not in Canada yet. We're working on it. And also, like Anarchast, it is available on the Liberty Radio Network that's broadcast around the world. But Free Talk Live is totally different than other broadcast radio shows in that the hosts come at things from a pro-liberty standpoint, and it's caller-driven, meaning callers can call in and change the course of the show completely for an evening. Rush Limbaugh does not allow that to happen. Sean Hannity does not allow that to happen. So I think it's a vast oversimplification to say that, one, those shows are the same, and that they're not different from anything else. He continues, neither provides answers to basic questions and problems because they're still based on human greed. Not sure I agree with that point. He says they're reactionary, not innovative political philosophies. Again, I don't think I agree here, but he continues a train of thought that I will get into, as well as the other questions here on the Thanksgiving leftover episode of Peace, Love, Liberty Radio, online at fppradio.com.
Coinbase is a simple and secure online Bitcoin wallet for sending, receiving, and storing Bitcoin. Coinbase also allows you to buy and sell Bitcoin using a bank account or use their tools to accept Bitcoin as a merchant. Coinbase has more than 1 million consumer wallets and is trusted by over 25,000 merchants, including Overstock.com, Khan Academy, Reddit, and of course, FPP. Get started at coinbase.fppradio.com. You can support FPP Radio by joining the Fans program. Fans are friends, allies, and numerous supporters. Fans help FPP afford to produce more original content. You can join the Fans program for as little as $1 per month through Patreon and get perks like ad-free versions of FPP Radio News and Peace, Love, Liberty Radio. To learn more or to join the Fans program, visit fans.fppradio.com. That's fans.fppradio.com.
You're listening to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio with Darryl W. Perry.
Welcome back to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio, online at fppradio.com. I am your host, Darryl W. Perry, the Liberty Penguin, the Wombat, and this is the Thanksgiving leftover edition of the Ask Me Anything. These questions, of course, left over from the Wednesday AMA. And because I have so many, I decided I'm just going to go ahead and do a second AMA this week. So the questioner here is talking about the show Anarchast and Free Talk Live. He says that they're reactionary and not innovative political philosophies. They're evolving from flawed programming built on flawed foundations. And I'm not necessarily sure exactly what he means here, but he says they're based on human greed. and they're not different than anything else. And again, I've already mentioned how they are different, not only from other things, but also from one another. He says, as capitalism goes, and I don't think any of the hosts of Free Talk Live consider themselves to be capitalist, but I digress. He says, as capitalism goes, however, libertarians, anarcho-capitalists, and voluntarists are closest to being decent, but they still fail to stand up to their own test of legitimacy. Not sure what the test of legitimacy is for a libertarian or a voluntarist, but he says money is only necessary because we make it so. Well, I never decreed upon myself that money is valuable. Society, and there's that S word again, the collectivist term that some people get all up in a tizzy about, society says you have to have money in order to buy things. So I didn't wake up one day and decide that money has value and that money's important, so don't blame me for this. It's the world that we live in. I can't go down to Walmart and, just like take things because, well, I need to eat, man. No, that's theft. He continues, climbing ladders of success is only necessary because we make it so. And let me just say that not everybody is concerned with, climbing a ladder of, quote unquote success. Not everybody wants to be the CEO of a Fortune 500 company. So, I may or may not agree with the statement there about ladders of success are necessary because we make them so, but I continue. He says, starting at the bottom, kid, and this seems to be a quote of something, starting at the bottom, kid, someday you can wear the big britches. Don't all people ultimately cater to the system so that they can have a chance at the D-head lottery? I think a lot of people, there are people that aren't caught up in the so-called rat race. There are other people that are. So to say that everybody is worried about this is a vast oversimplification of the human condition. He continues, maybe someday I can be a rich chump and greedy while others suffer, is what some people may think to themselves. How does any person vote for a rich a-hole when people are suffering in a suffering environment? How does this add up? Well, I didn't vote for a rich a-hole. I don't vote for a-holes. I only vote for people that actually agree with the ideas of liberty. But there are some people that they get duped by politicians. So that's how somebody could vote for a rich a-hole. And a lot of those people themselves might be suffering, but they see, some other group of people as the cause of their suffering. They don't see that, the government is the cause of their suffering. They think, oh, well, it's the, fill in the blank group that took my job, or the fill in the blank group that did this. It's somebody else that is the reason, and we need government to fix it. No. Government is the reason, and we need it to cease to exist in order to fix it. Continuing with the questions. He says, how is libertarianism going to possibly solve the problem of greed? And I don't think anybody has ever said that libertarianism can solve the problem of human greed. He next says, how is libertarianism going to solve the problem of human ego? Again, I don't think anybody has ever said that libertarianism can solve, the human ego. And I don't know if you can necessarily say that, the human ego in and of itself is a problem. I think an unchecked human ego is a problem, but the existence of an ego in and of itself, I don't see as a problem. And again, you're asking how a political philosophy can solve problems that are not political problems. And again, even if you were to ask, how can libertarianism solve fill-in-the-blank political problem? Well, the way libertarianism works is that the basis is nobody has the right to initiate force or fraud for political or social goals, meaning you don't get to force other people or coerce other people into doing what you think they should do, or force them or prevent them from doing things you think they should not do. Now, those are political problems. Human ego is not a political problem. Greed in and of itself is not a political problem. And even if it were a political problem, it's antithetical to the ideas of liberty to try to centrally plan how to do something. The whole point of libertarianism, as I said, is that you don't get to force other people to do what you think they should do. You don't get to use force or fraud for political or social goals. So trying to centrally plan how everything is going to work is antithetical to the ideas of liberty. He continues, how many questions can one guy ask? And I don't know. I've not counted how many questions there were. He says, next says, it's like a scene from Creepshow. Total change of thought here. It's like a scene from Creepshow where the folks are buried in the sand by a man on a beach. But I can hold my principles a long, long time. I don't know what Creepshow is. It's not something I think I've ever heard of, so I don't get the reference. He says, I'm still searching for the next step and haven't found any media or information, voices out there who will honestly take it. Not sure what he is talking about they won't honestly take. He says people spend so much time looking to written history for answers never committed to paper, made of trees, which likely held the answers at least in part, but they are now dead like redwood. There's more here on the Thanksgiving leftover edition of the Ask Me Anything station.
Are you tired of governments murdering people around the world? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless, free market, non-political currency. Bitcoin cannot be inflated or controlled by any government. By using their money, you are helping the state. Stop doing it. You have an incredible alternative available now. Learn it, use it, spread it. Get started with Bitcoin at weusecoins.com. That's weusecoins.com. When her plush and comfy life suddenly and unexpectedly fell apart, Brooke and her dog Cloud set out to defy the odds. If this is a man's world, as they say, living on the streets is no place for a young woman. One day she awoke in the redwood forest and realized she had become a hobo, and would ultimately come to know exactly what it means to survive. How to Be a Hobo by Brooke Willett is available from Amazon.com and all major bookstores.
You're listening to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio, online at fppradio.com.
Hey, welcome back to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio, online at fppradio.com. Continuing with the Thanksgiving leftovers, Ask Me Anything edition. And this is where things, I think, get really interesting. Because remember earlier, there was the question about eating meat, eating plants, human greed, etc. The questioner now says, people believe they will die if they don't eat. I'm not so sure about that. What is certain is that people will die if they want to die, whatever death is. All of this reminds me of American exceptionalism, another version and extension of human exceptionalism. So let me address this for just a second. There are actually studies, and it seems as though the person here asking the question is possibly wanting to reject science, to where scientists, I've repeatedly heard, doctors say that you can live, I think it's 3 days without water, 21 days without food. But the questioner here says that he thinks that humans can live without food. I don't know if he thinks that they can live without consuming water, although most people do think of water as, some kind of food. It's definitely a food group sort of thing, right? But he says that people only die because they want to die. And I don't think that is accurate. There are lots of people that, don't want to die, but, they wind up getting shot in the head in some kind of accident, or they get into a car crash and something goes through their chest. They're not deciding, you know what, I'm tired of living now. Let me see, what way I can, wind up wrecking my car. Or, I think it's a vast oversimplification. I do think that there might be some people that, at the end of their life, they've lived, 100 years, and they're frail and fragile and not in the best of health, and they give up the will to live. So, yes, there are some people that give up the will to live at some point in their life, but to say that that's the only reason anybody dies, I think, again, is a vast oversimplification. A vast, vast oversimplification. He then says human speech itself is probably is incapable of addressing my concerns, so please forgive me. And I might agree here. I will definitely say that the English language is incapable of addressing some of these concerns, and also some of the concerns that you have, such as, how will a political philosophy solve, human, not philosophy, but, how will libertarianism solve the human ego? Well, that's not necessarily a question that can be addressed because those things don't go together. He then continues with a different train of thought here, getting back to the eating. He says, I do eat meat, and I raise chickens for eggs, Peking duck, heritage turkeys, New Zealand red rabbits, Muscovy ducks, fruit, vegetables, through repurposing and permaculture, but all on land that I cannot afford to own. It's sad the state of things where regulation and taxation exist at every turn, and all are to blame. Well, I don't think you can blame everybody for the existence of regulation and taxation. I've certainly never voted to implement a regulation or to increase a tax, so you can't blame me for the existence of those things. Now, the people that you can blame are the people in the various legislative bodies that have voted on those regulations and on those taxes. But you can't blame the people that have never voted to implement those things for those things existing. He then continues, I shot a deer with a bow early in the season. I plan to shoot another one with my rifle soon. I'm not without guilt, far from it. By the way, would you like some Muscovy duck jerky? And I did respond to that via email saying, yes, I would love to taste some, and I'll even give a review of it on the show. Final set of questions here from what was left over on Wednesday, this past Wednesday, and then, of course, there will be another Ask Me Anything next Wednesday. He says, if our language is limited by design or influence, as certainly this forum and pathway is, then don't we need to use other and additional means to understand? Possibly, but I don't know what those things would be. And again, it's not that language in and of itself is bad or incapable of certain things. Certainly, there are some concepts that exist in languages other than English. There are concepts that exist in English that do not exist in other languages. So I don't think you can say language in and of itself is the problem. I would say that English is a huge problem, and it's really good when I hear other people say similar things. And I actually heard Brian Sovereign a couple of times on recent episodes of Sovereign Tech say that he thinks that English is an absolutely horrible language. And I feel sort of vindicated when other people, especially people that I kind of look up to, will say things that I have said. He says, if yes, then, though limited at least, what are directions of focus? I really don't know what other ways humans can communicate other than language. that would really wind up conveying what somebody is trying to wind up saying. Stay tuned. There's more.
In 1999, Darryl W. Perry began a search for traditional values, which led him down a path to the ideas of liberty. He tells the story in A Rebel's Journey, My Path to Liberty. Of the book, Dr. Brian Sovereign says, sometimes it's funny, and sometimes I think it's crazy, but it's always authentic. Find A Rebel's Journey, My Path to Liberty by Darryl W. Perry on Facebook, read reviews on Amazon, ask for A Rebel's Journey wherever books are sold, or visit arebelsjourney.com.
It is the year 91,001 BCE. Witness humanity's origins in Hyperchronius, a classic role-playing game for Windows PCs, with a story like no other game before. A liberty-oriented experience that is not to be missed. Go to ZOG.Ninja to get your copy of Hyperchronius today. Use the code FPP to get $1 off. Hyperchronius, ZOG.Ninja, code FPP.
This is Jeremy Scott, host of Dark 30. You're listening to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio with Darryl W. Perry.
I think I'm going to be able to get through this. Hopefully. If not, again, ask me anything every Wednesday. It says, where do we focus energy if it is only shotgun multiplex bandwidth accurate? Aren't we basically pointing and shooting into the dark as it is? And again, this is immediately following up the question about human language. So I don't know if that's what he's asking here. I'm not sure what shotgun multiplex bandwidth accuracy focus of energy is supposed to mean. He says, if so, can we in greater numbers admit this? Again, I'm not entirely sure I understand this question. He says, have we learned all there is to learn? And this is a very simple no, absolutely not. I forget who said it. I think it might have been Rumsfeld, and he's not somebody I quote very often, where he said there are things we know that we don't know, and things that we don't know that we don't know. And there are a lot of things that we don't know that we don't know. He says, should we be putting space travel as a priority over taking care of this reality here and now? And if somebody else wants to spend their money on space travel, that's fine. My issue with all things that the government runs is the fact that they are stealing money from people to do things that they want to do. But if Jeff Bezos or the guy from Tesla, I can't think of his name, Elon Musk, if they want to spend their money to shoot things into space, that's fine. Go for it. I'm not going to tell them that they're right or wrong. But when they take my money to do what they want, that's where I have a problem. He says, AI, as in artificial intelligence, AI and biotech are huge now and will be more obvious on the horizon, and that's another thing that is not being addressed enough. Why? And I would say that it is being addressed in some areas. I hear Brian Sovereign talk about it a good bit, but of course he's focused on tech. People that don't focus on tech, probably aren't addressing it because they don't know enough about it. I certainly don't know enough about AI or biotech to give any kind of informed opinion. Now, I could give you a very uninformed opinion on AI, but it would be just that, an uninformed opinion. He says, media seems to rehash, so journalism is dead, philosophy, and it's a bummer, is it not? And yeah, I do think it's sad that a lot of people in media don't necessarily do actual journalistic things. Final thought here, taxation, regulation, greed, to what end? Why? You said that once people wouldn't want to clean toilets, and actually I will not be able to address this here and now, but it will be addressed on Wednesday, AMA at FPPradio.com.
The podcasts of FPP Radio are licensed under Copy Heart. We believe that copying is a form of flattery and do not abide by the copyright laws. Those laws serve to restrict the flow of ideas which no one can really own. Copying is an act of love. Love is not subject to law. If you enjoy the show, consider joining the Fans program and get perks like ad-free versions of Peace, Love, Liberty Radio and FPP Radio News, and also get a copy of the monthly newspaper FPP News. To learn more or to join the Fans program, visit fans.fppradio.com.